It was just kind of a wild hobby. You know, I never intended for it to blossom into what it's become. I created it so that I could play Star Trek with my buddies quite a few years ago. And the winds of time kind of shifted, and it became this place where people would come to talk to me about Star Trek. And so I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could share it with a lot more people? And so then I approached CBS with this crazy idea of opening it up to the public. And you know, thankfully they thought it was a great idea, and so here we are. Well, I actually started, you know, building stuff in my spare time. I tour as Elvis. It's my main occupation. So I would come home, you know, from working and be gone 3-4 months, and then I would have some downtime. So I would try to enjoy myself, and I would be building stuff. I would work with my grandfather up in his workshop. He had a barn and workshop. It was a hobby. It was a way to escape the daily grind of your life. You know, it's like everybody has a hobby of some kind, generally. And mine was Star Trek. I started a relationship with Bill Tice, who was the costume designer for the original show. And then he went on to do Star Trek: The Next Generation. And we were kind of like pen pals, but like telephone pen pals. He gave me, it came shortly after his death, it was a box of things, badges and buttons and some rolls of paper, and there were patterns for costumes, and there was a set of blueprints from the original show. There was a master layout of all of the soundstage, so it was like taking the roof off the building and looking down into it with a scale. So you could see where they were laid out and what the size was. And then there was a set of elevations for a couple of the different sets, including the bridge, which is very rare. If I were to ever sell it, I could probably just retire on that alone. Everything was called out. Once you had that, it was like saying, hey kid, you're 16, here's your new car. You know, you now have the answers to, this is how big it was, this is how they did it. It made it easy. When you're trying to create something and you want it to look a certain way, you got to do your homework. And you don't want it to look like painted plywood, obviously. You want it to look like plastic or metal, whatever that vision of the future is. So you either use something like MDF, which is a composite material that cuts and sands, it has no grain, or you use plexiglass. You use all these elements and you bring them together to kind of create that fictional world. A lot of the rocker switches are antique. They don't make them anymore. You know, they were used as aircraft switches for different things in the cockpits. The original buttons for these were bomb release switches. They were used in World War II because the guy that designed all this originally, Matt Jeffries, was a pilot, and he was trying to infuse the ship with that real world sense of reality. He wanted some things to be, you know, completely functional and believable, while other things you would have to use your imagination more, like the candy colored buttons. But everything had a function, it had to. And that's one of the reasons that Roddenberry and, you know, got in trouble. They were spending a lot of money designing and developing this fictional spaceship, and the studio was like, come on guys, it's a rocket ship. Put some colored lights on the wall, let's just film. But Gene and Matt were both adamant, if the audience doesn't believe in the ship, they're not gonna watch the show. And I think history shows their attitude was the right way.
Okay, can you make it do its thing?
Sure.
If you had to put a dollar amount to how much you've spent to create this, what would you ballpark it at?
I don't even know that I could. And it would probably make me sick if I did. I don't really know, you know, because I built a lot of it, you know, prior to this becoming a business, and it was for the enjoyment out of it. And I remember telling myself, I distinctly remember saying, you know, if you really keep track of every dime that you've put into this thing, it's no longer going to be fun. And if it isn't going to be fun, then you shouldn't be doing it. No matter how many iterations of the show come out, it's still the original one that speaks to me the most. And I think it's because the 1960s were so dynamic. You know, the country was in a lot of ways like today. All this racial stuff, and we were doing all these things, and yet here was this little show showing black people and white people and Asian people and Russians working together. There was never a question about it. And I think that's something that we need to focus even harder on now. So that's, I think, what keeps my love affair going, because I grew up at a time where I thought we were past a lot of the crap that's going on today. It's heart sick to turn the news on and watch this stuff. You know, I think that we all need to take a step back, watch the original show, and take from it what Gene wanted us, you know, to take home the most, and that was, we are one race, we're the human race, and together nothing is impossible, and that's the message. To me, that's Star Trek.